His first study architecture at the University of Iowa. His work reflects the excellent commitment to research and appreciation of architecture that meaningfully engages people and cities in New York City, having designed many projects across the United States and higher education centers, high-rise residential towers, student housing, and offices. Jay graduated from Cornell University and is now an actor that's in tech teaching design philosophy is founded in the belief that architecture shapes behavior. So the presentation will run for about an hour. On behalf of everyone here today, I'd like to thank Yes Board and Benjamin Nathan. So, transforming cities.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check.
Let me show you a lot of our work today. So, pretty excited,
Eugene, where are the mics? Oh, they're still muted. They're still muted.
We do a lot of classical architecture, office buildings. Rental buildings, educational, sometimes yes, to a cultural building, also a museum. It's we built this museum in Liverpool a couple of years ago. This is the museum of natural history. We also do more complex.
One of the other guys.
Children's hospitals.
It might be fine. Maybe. Yeah.
Sports. So,
Is this still muted? Should I go? You're gonna have to, yeah.
is the name of the most recent project. Chelsea will, but freedom on
That's the camera.
the office as well.
Still working.
And in the winning of this competition, we really are versus project based on the water, really trying to bring people this is being part of stuff. As a very
Yeah, I know.
currently what exists here are some divide the rest of the city from the waterfront. The city that is on the waterfront, and also engage the park. Starters, kind of building off of the Baltimore based business on part of that. City. So we really want to rely on that. This is of course a massive base from the mountain front, so we know we need to get through the forts.
wooden facade, and it really gives a very sort of a dynamic expression to the facade, shaped around this courtyard in the middle, and then three of these light interior atrium spaces. So this is a factory and a research facility for the two robot companies. And then recently we opened the Sydney Fish Market, a giant 40,000 square meter roof over this. This was the rendering, the competition, and this is the final image. I think we got it almost right. It's a large fish market in the Bay of Sydney, which consists of two levels, basically. So the whole production and the whole landing and auction of fish is happening on the ground floor, and then the first floor is filled with restaurants and kiosks. And so it becomes very public space to visit and to enjoy. So some images of that, and you see these very public terraces sort of making this landscape underneath this wooden roof, which sits on these little steel columns. This is the facade to the street, and the facade towards the water. So the entire roof is timber structure clad with aluminium panels and white solar panels, PVs on the roof, and then these skylights. So this really mediates the entire sort of daylight into this space. Yeah, these are the views from underneath towards the harbour. You see the roof consisting of sets being shipped to the site, raised up, and each of these has one side with PVs with the sun, one side with the roof, and one side with the skylight. Here you see these spaces that are punctured through the public space. This is an auction hall on the ground floor where the fishes landed and being auctioned every morning. and also most of the ground floor is a very industrial space where the fishes landed. Couple of views from there. It was opened earlier this year, in the beginning of January. So, but what we are starting to look more and more into is how we can actually become even more, use even less resources when we build in Europe. This is in both legislation and elsewhere, it's becoming a really an issue. So we are looking at currently about half of our projects are transformation projects where we use existing buildings as the base. We kind of live in a building that has been transformed ourselves. This is our office in Copenhagen. It used to be an old shed for repairing of boats. We rebuilt that about 10 years ago, and yeah, this is how it looks like. So obviously the challenge here is that if we keep using material, it's not an infinite resource. The construction sector accounts for about half of the global resource use, and we tend to throw it away when we break buildings apart. If we look at and all of these numbers is obviously with a bit of, you need to be taken with a grain of salt, but there's studies that says that we approximately have 240 billion square meters in the world, construction in the world today, and prescribed new construction or prescribed necessary construction until 2050 is 420 billion square meters, equivalent to adding another Manhattan to the world every month. That's fast. So to cope with this, a lot of governments and a lot of cities are starting to introduce carbon budgets in the legislation. So this is a study of a lot of European carbon budgets, also Canadian and American have already carbon budgets. Problem with that is we're not really comparing apple with pears, so every country is making their own budgets and their own legislation at the moment. Also, public opinion is valid in this. This is a case from London, where a building was slated for demolition, Marks and Spencer building. They were went through planning, got permission, and got all the way up to basically the demolition company arriving at the building, and then it was rejected by the city. And because of public opinion, it had to go, it had to be transformed and kept. So obviously this was a major setback for the developer, and it has really influenced providing these lab-enabled office spaces. Obviously, the facade on a building like this needs to be replaced. So we're keeping the concrete structure. So basically, why do buildings become obsolete? We're standing today with a building mass from the 60s and 70s that have serious issues. We have economical challenges, they have technical challenges, and there are also cultural challenges that is the reason why buildings become obsolete. So we believe that we need to find a way to look at how to transform that sort of unloved building mass. These are all buildings that we have been looking at recently. Yeah, okay, so basically since times of COVID, there has been a flight towards quality in office buildings. It's no longer considered appropriate just to have an office space. We see that a lot of office spaces is vacant. This is a comparison between the Australian market and the American market. We see that about 10% of housing stock is vacant, and interestingly enough, we see that about 20% of the commercial properties in the US are vacant. In Manhattan or in New York alone, according to this article from 23, it's the equivalent of 23 Empire State Buildings that could fit into New York's empty office space. And at the same time, we have an aging building stock. This is the comparison between US and Denmark. Our buildings last for a little bit more than 60 years on average, and that's not a lot. If you see it in a historical context, from the 1900s, we see that buildings were built to last 200 to 300 years, and this is gradually decreasing until now, where housing structures are built to last about 50 years. So this is where we see the necessity to, let's say, uncover the potential of unloved buildings. And in the last 5-8 years, we have been looking at all of these very, very ugly, very rundown, and very sort of not sexy buildings. We have transformed all of them into something that we believe is worth using. The biggest one of them being the Quay Quarter Tower in Sydney. This is a transformation of an existing tower. the key quarter tower retains 65% of the original tower structure and 95% of the original core. Here you see this was a 1960s, one of the first high rises on the key quarter in Sydney. And this is the same view 10 years after with the restored or re-adapted new tower. It's located at the harbor, just behind the Opera House, so fantastic views. The idea was here to create a village in the sky, to take these mid-rise blocks and stack them on top of each other and create not a sort of a elegant vertical high-rise, but a stacked high-rise. Yeah, so this is the existing building. Expected lifetime about 50 years. Relatively bad usage ratio between net and between rentable space and core space. Relatively limited way of using in terms of office layouts. Relatively mediocre interior design, and also the way it sort of meets the street was leaving a lot of wishes open. But it had a decent floor-to-floor height, 3 meters 76, which enabled us to use it for office space, and it had an amazing location with views over the harbor. So what we did was to peel back a quarter of the tower and leave open the original structure. You see the image here on the left, and then graft onto that a new tower, basically, adding 50,000 square meters, so another 100% to of the floor plates. And you see the process here. So actually, so here you see the uncovering of the existing tower, and the new facade goes up, and the new tower goes up next to it. The things are grafted, the two towers are grafted together, and the facade is connected. So in the very short process of this movie, I think it took 3 years to build this, but still 1 year faster than if you would have built it from scratch, or torn it down, the existing tower, and built it from scratch. Saving about 12,000 tons of CO2, saving about 100 million Australian dollars in terms of material and in terms of time. So this was a big deal, and also quite important proof that we can transform buildings in this scale inside cities at a reasonable cost and a reasonable pace. Yeah, so this is just some of the before and after images. So obviously everything we do here, we do to improve quality of the space and quality of the urban space around it. So opening up ground floor, creating entrances where before there was just a wall. Opening up lobby spaces also inside where before this was just a sort of a one-story lobby space with an elevator. Here you see on the top right corner the existing structure or the existing office spaces, and you see how it's laid out now with floor-to-ceiling windows and with big atriums. I think we get that, yeah. So the idea here was that every unit of 9 floors had their own atrium. So the base layout is connecting 9 floors with a large atrium, and then we have the opportunity to add on every 3rd floor an additional floor plate here with smaller elements. So all of this can be added or taken away and done with the frame lift without the need of an external scaffolding or crane to keep basically the configuration of this high-rise flexible for the future. So you can have a tenant that needs a large space over 9 floors that wants the place connected, or you can have a tenant that simply wants 1 or 2 floors and close it off. So this is just the floor plates of this. You see down here, you see the existing building and the grafted core here. So the core is extended, and then all of this space here, where you see all where the atrium is located, it's basically part of the new building. And this is how an atrium over 9 floors look, and this is how an atrium in space with the closed roof over 3 floors looks like. Yeah, these are the views towards the opera house, and obviously this turning of this creates these terraces on every floor, also with amazing views over the harbor. So that was the QQT. That was the largest project that we've done to date. Another project that has been transformed recently is the Hotel Nico on the island of Crete, about 8,000 square meters. This was the image that we took when we first came there. We saw this rundown hotel on the waterfront, and on the right we have the transformed building. So basically, in this case, we didn't do much with the existing structure. We kept all of the existing structure. We added pools on the roofs, and we cleaned up the rooms. But here you see the rooms hasn't changed that much. But where things have really changed is that the whole activation of every space is much more interesting, and the facade towards the sea is obviously upgraded. A lot of these new materials are used to clad the structure, but in essence it's the same structure, it's the same building, and it's using the same components. Similar to this is a university in Sweden that we opened 4 years ago. This used to be an old aquatic center on the left side, and on the right side you see it was transformed into this university, adding a new building here on the right hand side, and using this old 50-meter pool to become the new entrance through this library. So this is the lobby space of the library, situated in this old 50-meter pool. Okay, how are we doing on
We're
time?
good, pretty good. Yeah, go for it.
We can go for this?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's now a couple of projects that are sort of more to the research side of things. This is the 12 areas in Denmark that are as part of the government plan to gentrify troubled areas. They decided to tear down some of these residential buildings from the 60s. Now these, obviously, from the 60s were kind of exemplary structures, I would say, with prefab elements. But obviously, for different reasons, they haven't succeeded as in a social structure, as building components, or as a residential units. But as building components, they actually have a sort of a very high degree of repetition. They have a very high degree of structural integrity, and a lot of these components are still very valid and very usable today. So we did this project together with the industry and together with partners, demolition companies, to try and see if we could use some of the components, the prefab concrete elements, in new structures. So removing them from the site and using them in new constructions. And some of the early adaptation was to use it as elements of on display. But some of the goal is actually to be able to use it in new residential buildings. So this is the vision of this. And obviously, in this, we met a lot of difficulties and a lot of sort of practical difficulties. This is how demolition happens today, and we were making rules for the demolition company how to lift out the concrete elements. We were testing the strength together with universities of the different elements, and we were able to salvage a number of elements to be used in different projects. So this is one example of that. This is the headquarters of this demolition company. The Cherning office, this is their hall, which where they had their offices or their storage, and they wanted to build a new headquarters with the elements that they found on building sites. So this was really a chance for us to explore if we can put this vision into reality. We can actually create something interesting out of materials that are salvaged from building sites. So turning the design process around, using existing material palettes, using basically what they found on different sites, and designing with that. So that becomes some of the textures and elements that you find in the space. This is the meeting rooms put together from different facades and windows and doors. And this is the overview of this space. So it actually becomes some kind of collage of different components, but it has its own sort of aesthetic beauty. This is some of the salvaged fabricated concrete slabs that were used. And these are the roof tiles that were used for wall claddings, and old wooden walls used also for walls. So 89% of this building has been done with recycled materials. All of the structural materials are sourced from in-house demolition projects. And the LCA of this is a very, very low 154 CO2 equivalents per square meters. So this could be one way, let's say one extreme of how to build in the future. But I definitely think that it's worth exploring different potentials in terms of using the existing building stock that we already have as a component in future construction.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I think we can start our Q&A session. I've got a couple of questions prepared. questions. You already have the mic, so we'll do one more after that.
Hello. My question is basically, I see that 3XN, I guess the ethos, you guys do a lot of research-based design. My question was, the Sydney Fish Market, I think what made that that building like very spectacular was the fact that you were able to, or was it I think it was a fish market. You were able to kind of get in touch with, no, the Baltimore, sorry, it was the Baltimore. You were able to kind of get in touch with the community. And I think more community-based design leads to, can be sustainable as well, because I think a building is nothing without the community. And my question is, do you guys plan on doing more community-based design work in the future, if possible?
Yeah, you're right.
Great, thank you.
So obviously, actually, you know, the second leg of the GXN research department is a behavioral design. So we have an anthropologist and a psychologist in the office that are dealing especially with that. And in some projects, haven't had the time to show them here, but obviously this is a very, very strong component of engaging communities and especially when you're transforming things actually. So you're not just scraping everything down and starting all over. You're transforming something that was part of a community for a long, long time. So yeah, this is definitely a key element and a key preparation in these early phases of design.
Yeah, and I think that community engagement is important on just about any project. I think we've even for that university one that we talked about with the stepping, we engaged the community on that, asked actual students what they wanted out of their space. We even got in touch with the architecture department there, gave their students a try as how would you design for your campus. So I think that element of community engagement is really important because at the end of the day we are making buildings for people and they should fit the context that is for. Okay. All right, we will do one last question and then we'll call it there.
So you mentioned that floor-to-floor height is a key limiting factor in whether or not a building is a good candidate for transformation. What is that magical number? Is it 10 feet from one floor to the next or greater than that? And how exactly does that play into the decision making?
I'm not super good in feet and inches, I have to say, so whether that works or not. But no, I think that you know, buildings built in the 60s and 70s usually don't have the duct size, the mechanical installations that we require today. So all of that sort of technical installations, they're growing. That means that if you don't have a good floor-to-floor height, it becomes difficult to reuse the building one-to-one. So if you're pushed on that limit, it becomes difficult. And obviously, the other component is use, right? So in the tower in London, I showed you, the client wants to do lab-enabled office spaces. That means that you're putting much more ventilation requirements into a traditional office space, which makes it impossible to generate sort of generous office spaces. So this is also obviously important because, you know, part of why this building was not used is also that it's not that it's not standing and it's not you know, it is still a space, but nobody wants to lease it because, and if we build new spaces that nobody wants to lease, then it's all for nothing, right? So we, you know, part of that decision making is also really to make spaces that people want to use, that becomes more attractive, and I think space and height is a factor in that. Yeah. So I can't give you a number, floor-to-floor height that needs to work. It also is a very specific investigation that needs to be made together with mechanical engineers, together with developers and clients to evaluate the use and installations.
Great. I think that's all. So thank you everybody for coming out and hearing us give our lecture. Professor Park, are there anything else for closing comments? Great.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you everybody.